Hello and welcome to the video lecture series brought to you by St. Andrews Institute of Technology and Management. We are discussing the subject called Programming for Problem Solving. My name is Ravinder. I am an assistant professor with the ETC department. And today we are going to study the topic called break and continue. Now, break and continue are the keywords used in C to conditionally terminate the loop. As you know, we have studied the loop in the last few lectures thoroughly, and we have seen some few examples. Uh, in that few examples, you may have noticed that once we get inside the loop, we have no way of getting out of the loop if some condition satisfies. Okay, or we have no way of skipping a particular iteration or particular pass of a loop if some condition satisfy. So break and continue actually provides us with the functionality by the use of which we can either get out of the loop prematurely if some condition is satisfied, or we can skip a single pass or multiple passes of a loop if the condition satisfies. So everything depends on a particular condition. So now if a particular thing is dependent on the condition, you may figure out that we have to use the if else or while statements. Okay, so let's get ahead and see. First we'll see what is the difference between break and continue, how do they work, and then after that we'll see a single example of both of them. Okay. So here it is. Here we have the comparison between break and continue. The first we'll discuss about the task. Now we don't know what is break and continue yet, so first I'm going to discuss a few minutes about what is break and what is continue. After that we are going to see the comparison. So let's talk about their task. Now in the break, as you can see, it has been written there, it terminates the execution of remaining iterations of the loop. Okay, suppose you have for loop and that for loop is destined to iterate for 10 passes. Okay, now if you input a break statement anywhere in your code, in the code block, inside some condition, that is inside a if block, and if the condition of that if block satisfies the condition or it comes out to be true, then you will go inside the if block, and inside the if block you have written the keyword break. In that case, the control of your application will get out of the for loop, be it how many, or it doesn't matter how many iterations of the for loop are still not executed or how many passes of the for loop are remaining. Okay, suppose your for loop is destined to run for 10 passes, and on the fifth pass the condition satisfies, and after the condition is satisfied, inside the if the break has been encountered by the compiler, then and there the control will switch out of the for loop. It will not execute remaining passes, and control will switch to the next statement after the for loop. Okay, next statement after the for loop. Okay, so break is the keyword which is used to terminate your for loop prematurely. Okay, now let's go to the continue. Now in continue, the let's say the continue, it doesn't terminates the complete for loop or the complete loop. It actually terminates the current iteration of the loop, or skips the current pass of the loop. Now these continue and breaks, both of them are actually used with some kind of conditional statements, that is if else block. Now suppose you have posed a condition with the if statement, and inside the if block you have written the keyword continue. Okay, now if that condition in some iteration of your loop, let's say in the fifth iteration of your loop, and your loop is destined to run for 10 iteration, that is 10 passes, and if in the fifth iteration or the third iteration of the loop the condition satisfy, then in that case all the statements after the continue keyword will be skipped, and your control will go to the next iteration, that is fourth iteration. So in a way you can say that your third iteration, because in the third you have the compiler has encountered with continue keyword. For third iteration, the continue will let the compiler ask, or will ask the compilers to skip the statements written below the continue inside the for loop statement. Okay, and after that the next iteration will start, and if the condition doesn't satisfies for the continue in the next iteration, then the loop will work normally as it should be. Okay, now before reading this difference, let us first see one example of each, and then it will, I think, will make more sense. So we'll see one example of each one of them. So I will start a for loop, and I will run this for loop for exactly 10 times. Okay. Now inside this for loop, suppose you want that after, if the for loop encounters let's say number 8 for the iteration variable I, then the loop must terminate then and there. Suppose, now this is not the real application of it. In this case, you can always try to uh, run your loop only for 8 times. That is, I must be less than equal to 8. But this is just for your sake of understanding that I am showing. Okay, so I want my loop to be terminated when the value of I becomes 8. Although I have stated that the loop will continue until the value of I becomes greater than 10. So loop is destined to run 10 times. But somehow I want that my loop should terminate if the value of I becomes equal to 8. So in that case, we are going to use the break statement, because break, let me remind you again, break is the keyword which terminates your loop prematurely. Okay, so if the value of I is equal to 8, then break, and that is it. Okay, else, or I can say printf in the new line. So as you can see here in this particular example, the for loop is destined to run for 10 times. That is, the value of I must be greater than 11 if this loop has to stop. But I have inserted an if statement, and this if statement says that if the value of I is equal to 8, then we'll go inside the if block, and inside the if block there is a single statement which is the keyword break. So what will happen here is the loop will run for 1 to 7 times smoothly, because the we will not go inside this if block because the value of I is not equal to 8 at any time. At the 8th iteration, the value of I become 8. At that time, we'll go inside the condition inside the if block will satisfy equal to true, and we'll go inside the block, if block. Now inside the if block, the compiler will encounter the break statement. Now this break statement will then terminates this for loop prematurely. That is, the remaining iteration, that is the I equal to 9 and I equal to 10, will not be executed, and the control will switch out of the for loop. So out of the for loop is this statement. There is nothing out of for loop. So that means if our code runs smoothly, the numbers from 1 to 7 must print, and after that the numbers must not print or should not print. Okay, but as you can see here, this printf statement is inside the for loop. So if this condition is not satisfied for any of the value of the I, then numbers from 1 to 10 must print. But that is not the case, because at some junction between 1 to 10, the value of I is going to be equal to 8. Okay, so let's see this. Let me save it first, if it's okay or not. There you can see the value from 1 to 7 has been printed. But as soon as the value of I becomes 8, the condition inside the if block is satisfied. We will go, or the compiler will go inside this block. In this block, it will find out that there is a statement written called as break, which is a keyword. It means we should the control will terminate this for loop instantly, and the remaining iterations of the loop will not be executed, and will be outside the for loop. And outside the for loop, as there are no statements, so that your application will terminate. And we can make this more interesting by writing a printf statement here. Okay, or we can see here, let me show you. If I do this as plus 2, I think in this case the I is never going to be equal to 8, because the value starts with 1. Let me do it not 1 but yeah, let me run this first. Let's see what happens. Okay, there is. Look at here what has happened here. The values that are printed are 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, because there is no step increase. There is no increase in 1. Every time the loop, there is one pass of loop, the value of I increases by 2. This is what I have written here. Okay. Now in this case, the value of I never becomes equal to 8, because in the first pass, the value of I is 1. In the second pass, the value of I will increased by 2. That is 1 plus 2 equal to 3. So that is why 3 has been printed here. Then in the next pass, it will become 5. 5 has been printed here. In the next pass, the value will become 7. 7 has been printed here. In the next pass, the value does not become 8. It will become 9 eventually, because 7 plus 2 is 9. So the value of I never become 8. And if it never becomes 8, then all the iterations of the loop are run smoothly, are passed smoothly, and this break statement has never been encountered. Okay, but if somehow, if this condition is again changed to I++, the value of I will become 8, and in that case your break statement uh, will make this loop terminated prematurely. So I think you have understood the importance of break. If you want to terminate your loop prematurely on the satisfaction of some condition, then in that case, okay, in that case, you can see here that break is your keyword which is going to do that. But breaks are always used in conjunction with some conditional statements, like if statement, normally. So I think you have understood the break. Let us do one more example with continue. Okay, so I'll make this I++ again. And in this case, I will write continue here first. Okay, and I will change this condition. There it is. Now in this condition here, if first let's see the for loop. The for loop is now the normal for loop that we have understood in the starting. We have seen this kind of example many a times. The step increase is there, that is every time the loop is going to make one pass, the value of I is going to increase by 1. Okay, so the value of I will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 in the subsequent passes. Now if the value of I is divided by 2 exactly, that is why when the value of divided by 2 leaves the remainder equal to 0, in that case continue. That is, you must skip the statements below the continue. That is, this printf statement is going to be skipped if this condition satisfies. Okay, and the loop is going to move to next pass or next iteration. So here's the difference. In break statement, the loop get terminated, but in the continue statement, it terminates only this particular iteration or pass. Not even complete pass is terminated, but the all the statements written below the continue statement are skipped. They will not run, and we'll go to the next iteration. And inside the next iteration, if condition is not satisfied, then the loop will work as normal. Okay, so in this case the condition is, if the value of I is divided by 2 exactly, then we must skip the statement below, that is printf statement. As you can know, all the numbers that are exactly divided by 2 are called as even, and all the numbers that are not divided by 2 exactly are called odd. So in that case, I think the value of I, when the value of I will be even, then the continue will be executed. And whenever the value of I is odd, the continue will be, we will not go inside this if block, and the value is going to be printed out. So this particular loop is going to print all the odd numbers between 1 to 10. So let's try to execute this. And there it is. See, in the first pass, the value of I is equal to 1. Now 1 is not exactly divided by 2. So we'll not go inside this if block. And continue keyword is never encountered by the compiler. And the print statement is executed. And it has printed the value of I, that is equal to 1. Then at the end of the pass, the value is incremented by 1. Now the value of I has become 2. Now we'll go there. The condition is being checked. 2 is less than 10 or equal to 10. The condition is true. We'll go inside the for loop. Inside the for loop, the first statement is if block. Now inside the if block, there is one more condition. That is, if the value of I is exactly divisible by 2 or not. In this case, the value, or in this pass, the value of I is equal to 2. Now 2 is exactly divisible by 2. So the remainder of 2 divisible by 2 will be is going to be equal to 0. In that case, we'll go inside the if blocks, and inside the if block there is one statement called continue keyword. Now continue keyword will make all the statements below it inside the loop to be skipped. Okay, so this printf statement will be skipped. It is not going to be executed, and the value of I is going to be incremented again. That is equal to I will become 3. Now again the same process continues. So all the even values of I will be skipped. Okay, for all the even values of I, the continue will run, because this condition will be satisfied. And if continue runs, then this printf statement will not be executed. But for all the odd values of I, this condition is not going to be satisfied. So this continue will not run, and this printf statement will be executed. So that is why all the odd values between 1 to 10 are printed here, and all the even values are skipped, because for all the even values of I, the continue has been encountered by the compiler. So I think you have understood the difference between the break and the continue now. Well, let's go ahead to the difference table and finish this lecture. So the first one we have discussed already. Next is the control after break and continue. Now break resumes the control of the application to the end of loop and closing that break. Okay, we have encountered this. If we have encountered the break, the control is going to switch out of the loop. And if continue has been encountered, then continue resumes the control of the application to the next iteration of the loop and closing the continue. Okay, we have already seen that the control doesn't get out of the for loop, but it just switches to the next iteration and skips the conditions, the statements written below the continue in the present iteration. Okay. Now what are the causes? It causes early termination of the loop. It causes early execution of the next iteration. Okay, so there is a difference. it causes termination of the loop. That means termination, the loop is going to be suspended then and there, and no matter how many iterations of the loop are left to be executed, they are not going to be executed again. But in the continue, the next iteration will be executed and the present iteration will be suspended. Now, next difference is the break stops the continuation of the loop. The continue do not stop the continuation of the loop. Think we have already discussed that. And the last one is break can be used with switch and label. We haven't discussed about switch. We are going to be in the next lecture. Now, continue cannot be executed with switch. Okay. Now we're going to see the switch in the next lecture. Then you will be able to understand why we cannot do this. Now, let me tell you that break and continue are associated with the loops only. Okay, they are used with the loops and not with the if statements. If statement are only inserted to make sure that continue or break should be executed at a particular, if a particular condition is satisfied. That is only the only reason. But breaks and continues are used with loops. So I think I made myself pretty clear what is break and continue, how we can use them, and what is the basic difference between break and continue. So I'm going to end this lecture now.